Welcome to my channel. Today's Afrocentric experience is him. Let's talk about the approach of ANI, the Afrocentric Neo-Impressionism. I call it the art movement. I'm going to start out with a simple sketch, keeping it loose and simple, not going into a lot of details, because I'm going to use a line and mass approach to help get things started. I finally began to sketch in the first big lines to start the structure of the head with a thin mixture of Alizarine, Ultramarine blue, and titanium white. This gives me the important basic proportions and their placements on the head. Now, ask yourself this question right here. When you're looking at your reference or your subject, as if you're painting from life, what is it that you see? Or more importantly, how do you see it? One of the true bases of what we use as artists is our observation. You want to have clarity on what you're looking at. Learn to see things in a more painterly manner, or think like a painter. In other words, learn to break things down to their simplest forms. Okay, so let's talk colors. The primary colors I use for my skin on my ANI figures are titanium white, alizarin, French ultramarine, and ivory black. Now I use very little titanium white to shift the values of the colors. Very little, because I'm trying to learn to become more of a value painter than just a painter. Now I'm also learning to push even more color, more chroma into these pieces, because it's all about letting nature take over. Not so much as, okay, I look at the neck and I see a cylinder and I'm going to start out with that cylinder. No, I'll sketch that neck out and try to keep it as raw and fresh as possible so that I can go in and feel what it is that I'm looking for, to let nature take over. So those values will give you an indentation of this is a neck. It's all about laying the paint down, letting the brushwork or the brush talk, because I believe that every brushstroke that is given on a piece, it tells the story. You're sitting there telling a visual story. Like right now, as you guys watch this video, you're seeing me speak visually to you as you watch these brush strokes make something come to life. So in this instance, I'm going for the look of a guy, a bearded man in this Afrocentric impressionistic feel. But as I paint this impressionistic feel, I'm also being expressive with it, because it's not just me sitting there taking my time trying to paint and make sure I get things right. No, I like those inconsistencies. I like those imperfections. I mean, even when this piece was completed, you could still see some of the canvas through the head and around the vignette. I didn't go with a background because I wanted to focus more on the subject, because, again, it's all about the brushwork telling the story more in terms of a brush talk. Now, the crazy thing about working on this piece is when you work in this fashion, you tend to find out a lot of things about yourself as an artist. I like to explore and find out certain things about myself as an individual as well. So with this painting, I'm deciding to go with a number 1 and a number 3 brush. Now, usually when I paint, I'll go ahead and start off with the larger brushes to get the thick, bold brush strokes. But this time, I'm just trying something a little different. Now, the crazy thing about this brush is it was something I discovered. It's called the Artist Loft brush from Michaels. It's a long-handled tan brush with a blue tip. I didn't use these brushes at first. It was just something I just stumbled across because, sometimes I will paint the same way I would paint with the oils, but I was using acrylics. And I was like, man, I really like the way this brush feels. It's a flat synthetic brush. I'm like, okay. So I came into an oil piece one day and I was just trying it out and I like the feel. So I just added that to my tools of brushes that I like to use. That brush from Michaels. And then I used the big boys like the Grand Prix Silvers, the Signet brushes. I haven't tried the Rosemary's, so those are the ones I'm really looking forward to using because I've been hearing such great things about those brushes. But this piece is all about exploration. Explore, finding out new things, because when you run across moments like that, you tend to ask yourself questions, and it's all about digging deep. And when you answer that, dig even deeper, because it's all about finding oneself as far as who you are along this journey of art. Okay, now back on the journey of this piece to speak to you guys in a visual manner, the brushstrokes. This is a man who has a beard. The face is starting to take shape based off the visual effects that I'm giving you from just simple brush work. Me actually painting with just simple brush strokes. So with this piece, basically what I'm doing is taking a solvent, mineral spirits, to thin the paint down to use the technique that they call fat over lean. So in the beginning stages, what I would do is paint with more solvent to break the paint down so it'll go over the canvas panel so that the paint will flow like, if you will, a watercolor. It'll give you like a watercolor feel, but it's not exactly like watercolor because I don't break it down that far. Then when I start adding the light areas, I will use less solvent, so that way the paint is kind of thick. It won't have that buttery feel that I look for when I'm using walnut oils or something like that, which is a slow drying medium. So, but in this case right here, since we're painting the Alla Prima method, which means in one sitting, because it really took me 30 minutes and 32 seconds to paint this piece. So when I edited out all the mixing time that I did on the palette, so that broke the video down to 20 minutes and some seconds. Okay, the brush stroke. Now you hear me use the term brush talk. Brush talk is basically the brush strokes telling a story of a piece coming together. My brush strokes, or the brush talks, is a combination of many different types of brush strokes, which gives a theatrical approach to the piece that I'm working on. Now in my college years of oil painting, I was taught to make a mark or a brush stroke across the surface of the canvas, a true brush stroke, which made me feel restricted of letting loose. I felt like I was like trapped in this box and I couldn't be who I was as an artist. So I just had to get out. But over time, my instructors, my fellow students and friends started to see how I was expressing myself as an artist on the canvas. Now, when I'm feeling it, I mean really, really feeling it, when that brush is in my hand, acting as an extension of my arm, with the spring of the paintbrush bristles off the surface of my canvas, you're talking about being in the zone. Man, I am there. Excitement, the emotion, the feeling of painting what it is that I'm painting, trying to get a feel for that subject matter. Not being technical about it, not drawing it out, but to get a feel for what it is that I'm painting. Speaking of feelings, which reminds me of a story back when I was taking a workshop in my early years of painting. This workshop was being given by a friend, a dear friend and mentor. I was at the early stages of painting, just learning, having a lot of terms that was thrown at me that I really did not understand at the time. But as you dig deeper into this, you will learn the language that is being spoken. But he had 4 or 5 models And around each model, it was about 4 or 5 of us. So we came in that morning. He had little snacks and stuff for us for breakfast. We all meted and greeted each other. And when we got started, we were setting up. I had my headset on. I had my little music picked out and everything. So because I really wanted to be in the moment. I really wanted to grasp what was in front of me so I can get it. And I had my scores, movie scores, anime music, or whatever it is I was listening to at that moment. I can't really remember, but I do know it was at least a movie score or anime score. And I started doing my little movement thing that I do because I was really getting into it. His uncle, because I was painting his uncle at the time, his uncle was looking at me smiling, and I looked up and I was smiling back at him because I was just in the zone. And then next thing you know, there were students on the side of me looking, and then he was standing behind me with his hands on his hip. I guess he was wondering, what are you doing? But that was just me expressing myself as an artist, being in the moment, looking to see what's in front of me. And then when he left and came back, he seen that, there was some growth with me. And at that moment, he was telling me that from this point on, because you are getting better, I'm going to be really meticulous about what it is you're doing. I'm going to nitpick. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Just because his mentor, Ivory Kinsler, had done him like that. Rest in peace. Great artist. You guys need to check him out. Great artist. And from that moment right there, I knew then that, it's not about what people tell you how you should do something, because what works for them may not work for you. It's always best to go out, seek out people who you think can give you some sort of guidance, or if their painting style is something that you're interested in, go with that. Whatever it is about that artist that you like, go for it. Because people who mentor you tend to help get you going, get the engine running. Because a lot of the times we don't have an idea which direction to go, but they will help. Number one, help guide you. Number two, keep you motivated. Number three, help open doors for you, because they will give you ideas as far as from what they've done in the past to keep you from making the same mistakes that they've made. Him and a few other people has been tremendous assets to me in this painting world. Now I've gotten to a point to where I still get mentorship from them. They still guide me because they are my friends first and foremost. With them and a whole host of other artists that I talk to so that I can learn, that I practice, these people help me with my growth as an artist. And even people who are not at that level, because I'm always learning something from either you're on a high plane or a low plane. I've learned stuff from people from every aspect of it, because that's something I do. I tend to look to learn, to get a feel for what it is that I'm doing as an artist, so I can continue to grow. Because like Tony Bennett said it great, he's a dear friend of Ivory Kinsler. I want to be a contender of palettes, and that's what I strive to be, a contender of palettes. Also keep in mind, the paint on your palette has to have a natural consistency, where the oil paint is thick and have a buttery-like feel. Now, with that buttery-like feel, that consistency is what works for me. Now, you as an artist, I can give you an idea of what works for me, but you will eventually have to figure out what works for you. The consistency of the paint is basically, like I said earlier, I start out with a solvent. In this piece, I use a solvent all the way through. I depending on what stage I'm at, I'll use more to less solvent. Now, if I was actually working on a landscape, maybe even a cityscape or portrait, I would use a walnut oil, which is a slow dry medium, because I like for my paint to stay wet until I come into the next stage of it. And then that's when, work on something else to step away from it, because that's the most important part. Me stepping away from it, coming back to that piece with a fresh set of eyes. But as far as the consistency, like I said earlier, you want to figure out what works for you. I will give you an idea. I start out with the solvent, breaking the paint down to change the viscosity, basically change how the paint flows across the canvas. I go for a watercolor feel in the beginning, not all the way breaking it down that far like watercolors, but the paint is kind of thin. Then I bring it into the fat over leaned, using less solvent, more paint to give it that thick, buttery feel. And that right there is what works for me. Now, like I said, it's up to you as the artist to figure out what works for you. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about structure. Structure is one of the rules and principles that I paint from. Now, a lot of other artists, they paint, using structure as well, but this is how I handle it. After the blocking stage, I'll start moving into structuring out the subject matter. Back when I first started, I was so in a hurry to try to hurry up and get toward the end of the piece because I was excited. I had it in my head as far as what it would look like. And naturally, I would have some issues working toward the end and some ideas at the same time I was working the piece. But I did not spend a lot of time on structuring because I was so in a hurry to get toward the end. But as I said, over the years, I've learned that if you take your time, look at what you're painting, truly look at what you're painting, and break that subject down, whether it's a nose, ear, mouth, head, whatever it is, still life you're painting. And what I've learned is that the more you learn to structure whatever it is that you're painting, number one, the better you're going to get at it, and the more easier it'll be for you to be able to look at a subject matter and break it down and to try to help you move toward getting a feel of a 3D image on a 2D surface. That's like one of the things that I've learned over the years. Now, like I said, with this piece right here that I'm working on, I'm not going to push it as far just because it's a YouTube video and it's to give you guys some ideas as far as my approach to the style of painting that I created. I have something I would like to share since I'm getting toward the end of the video. It's how I study other artists. I'm pretty sure everyone has their viewpoint as far as how they do it. But since I'm just speaking on structure, I am going to talk about Ivory Kinsler. Kinsler, he has a DVD out that's my approach to the head. Fabulous video. Now I have books on the man. I have met the man in person, and I have DVDs on him. And I was introduced to him from my mentor. It was a real pleasure to meet Ivory Kinsler. But regardless of all that, basically what it is that I do is I watch DVDs to try to learn what it is that I don't know and what it is that I could use or learn to make what it is that I'm doing better so that I can have a better understanding to what it is that I'm doing. Now, what I notice about the DVDs sometimes, they'll show you like the start and then it jumps from the start, skip the middle, and then it comes to the end. Now, some artists show that information in between, some don't. But what I am saying is that when you look at an artist do his or her thing, look at everything about what they're doing. I mean, I look at how they hold the brush, how they work the brush, how they talk about what it is that they're doing. And then when it gets to the next scene and it's over here, and then what I would do is I would come in and I would map out what they're doing. And then once I map it out or give myself an idea of what they're doing, I would then take that information, put it next to my canvas, and then work the piece that I'm working to get an idea or to try to get a feel for what it is that they're doing or how they came about getting the results that they've gotten.